She formed her company Rosas in 1983, and created then her first company work, Rosas Dance Rosas. And since 1980, she's created 18 major productions. And increasingly throughout the late 80s and into the 90s, she incorporated elements of theater, of text, film, and other elements into her work. Also, she quite regularly uses live music, but is not working with live music tonight. And her work was noted and continues to be for its physical intensity, for its rigorous formal composition, for the deep exploration that she always works with in terms of music, and her ability to reveal the formal structures and really the architecture of the music itself, of the composition that she works with. And I think, lastly, she's known for constantly reinventing her work and always looking for the next stage of development. In 1992, she was asked to be the resident company at La Monnaie, which is the Royal Opera House in Brussels, and in 1995 created a new educational arm of the Monnaie called Parts, which is an international school for dance. The company has been here twice, and the last times she was not able to be with the company. Often she's not on tour with the company, so it really is a tremendous pleasure to have Anne Teresa De Keersmaeker here with us tonight. I'm sorry about the long introduction, but I wanted to begin with talking a little bit about the piece we're going to see tonight called Drumming, and the music. It's again set to a piece by Steve Reich. It's in fact set to Steve Reich's entire, one of his longest works called Drumming. Could you talk a little bit about what's attracted you to Steve's compositions in the past and his music in general, how drumming differs somewhat from the other times you've worked with his music?
Yeah. Well, I've had from the very beginning a very big admiration for Steve Reich's work. I really think that in the minimal music, in American minimal music, he has been, I think, yeah, I would say the most important composer in minimal music. And especially those very early compositions, such as Piano Phase and Drumming Like Tonight. I've been fascinated by the way how he combines like a very big economy of means, very reduced vocabulary, with a very rigorous and logical procedures. Also the music always was for me like sort of an inviting me to dance in a very physical way. I had the feeling it gave me in the same time suggestions to musical structure, and at the same time it let me enough freedom to develop my own language and an own story on it. Now, it's also nice to come back to Steve Reich after nearly 20 years, because there has been Steve Reich in the very beginning, and then there has been Monteverdi and Bach and Beethoven and Bartók, lots of Bartók, more Steve Reich. Yeah, there has been Brahms, there has been Wagner, there has been, not Stravinsky, there hasn't been any Stravinsky, but there has been Berg and Webern. A lot of dead composers, mostly dead composers. And then a few living composers, such as Ligeti, Reich, Lindbergh. So it was nice to come back to it, also from the very beginning, where it was Phase was a duet, which I danced myself with Michelin, and now with the whole company. So it's still minimal dancing, but it's different, I think, as 20 years ago. The structures are more complex. The notion of economy has changed in Phase. It was really like 2 movements or 3 movements I had literally, where here the piece is opened by a very long phrase presented by one dancer, which will be followed by a whole number of transformations and variations in space and in time. Lots of notion of mirrors in time and in space. and yeah, it's different. Yeah.
You've said before that what Steve has talked about his composition, drumming, is that the use of a very short musical phrase, which was repeated over and over, but layered and used with different instruments and to create something very new and dense. He said that that's allowed, the use of that kind of repeated structure has allowed us, him to get away from the eye and away from the sort of focus on, really to open it up with the use of away from the individual. And you've said that actually the music does something very different for you. It actually opens up, and your use of a repeated phrase opens up a kind of almost humanity, a kind of texture that
Well, what has been very important in the making of this piece was the notion of working with a group of people and how they can function as a group, how they are strong as a group, but in the same time how each individual has his own trajectory in it, and how they can nearly have like design their own personal story in it, and in the same time, yeah, function as a unity, as a community together. And that's nearly a political issue, I think, because I think it's something which is really different for between composers or people who work or visual artists and choreographers. You really always work. A choreographer, he writes with people. I mean, with their possibilities, but also with their limits, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and whether a piece becomes strong or not has a lot to do whether you get the energy of them from day to day as a group. I just think that it's like a sort of microcosmos, and I just think you can't really you can't even compare it to a football team, I think, but yeah, it's a very peculiar situation, and I think a lot of people don't realize that it's so different. And yeah, this issue, how do you live as a group, and what's your way as an individual in it, your responsibility, your freedom, is a very important thing, I think.
Do you allow your dancers to bring a lot to the final creation?
Oh yeah, they have a very. I'm not the kind of choreographer. I think it's kind of choreographer who is disappearing more and more, who's coming into the studio and says everybody to the right, and now everybody to the left, now everybody to the front and to the back. It's way much more. You give starting points, and then the people go in their own way, in a creative way. They give answers to that.
Right.
But maybe that's not only like this in arts or in choreography. I think it's maybe a general thinking about working today,
right,
where people less and less function like that. Yeah, and where what is of course the difficult point about it is that you ask people to be very creative and very how do you say, disponible, they say in French, available.
Right, there.
Yeah, to be available and to ready to give and to be generous, and at the same time, to be available, and at the same time to be very independent. It's sometimes it can seem contradictory, but it's yeah. What is especially also with dancers, which I think is still different, is very interesting but different, is that in the same time they need to have this like physical rigor, which is and discipline. Yeah, I think you really should use the word discipline, which is proper to athletes. And but in the same time they have to have a nearly an artistic imagination and. Have an incredible, how do you say that in English? Craving for the unknown and for taking risks, and to combine those things, like this daily discipline, with, on the other hand, this kind of craziness you need. Yeah, that's not easy to deal with.
Right. This work was originally came out of a piece called Just Before in 1997, and you used just
97.
Yes, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, you said 87. No,
97.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was you just started with the first movement of Steve's piece was
Yes.
just in that section, and then you decided to create a whole work. What was that? What made you decide to take that? And you've also said that it freed you up, the fact that the initial choreography was already created, and it allowed you a lot more freedom to kind of take drumming to a whole another place.
Oh, because I'm slow and it takes time. It's true, it takes time. So there was all the basic vocabulary was set, and the main spatial patterns weren't there. So, and then I could work and divide it over the year. I could like slowly build to the totality of the piece. Mm.
Was it nice to be doing, I know you have a number in recent years, but just a purely movement piece?
Oh yeah, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it a lot, and people always think then, are you going to make now only movement music pieces? And then it's just some pieces there is movement, text and music together, and some pieces they have only movement and music. And some pieces they have only movement and text, like we did last year with 3 other people. I did a piece of Heiner Miller Quartet, where there is, so to say, no music in it. It's only text and movement, and it's just different things. And you don't always want to eat the same thing. I like variation, so that's it.
Is there anything about the lighting in particular, or the costuming that you would like to talk about with drumming in particular?
Well, I was quite happy about the collaboration of with first of all, the person who did the set and the light is Jan Verswijfeld, who is a person which I've been working also with just before. In the way how he goes with and gives contradiction to it. The light follows his own logic, a logic which is inspired by the structure of the choreography, but at the same time has his own independence. And yeah, I like the orange. And then the working with for the costumes was also the second time I worked with Dries van Noten, who is a Belgian designer. Yeah.
Would you say anything about the pace of the work? The composition begins with 4 tuned bongos, sets of bongos performed. Then it moves into marimbas and then glockenspiels. Steve Reich has sort of gone through the spectrum of the percussion family, and then ends with all the pieces together. Did the different instrument families affect and that pace, the movement structure that he created, affect the pace that you created?
No, not really, not in such a way. I mean, I didn't respect the division in sections in the same way. It was more, somehow you could say that maybe the music is more like a canvas for the dancing. Yeah, because the choreography really has its own logic and structural building, which sometimes in certain breaking points in the music, they fall together with breaking points in the dancing, but others they're phased, they're shifted, they're not together.
Right. We do have time for a couple of questions if people have any. If not, I have a whole, at least another half hour's worth of questions, but yes?
When you choreograph, do you ever actually put it on paper where the dancers should be at a certain time as far as the music is concerned? Or do you carry it all in your head?
No. Sometimes Sometimes I do it on paper.
Okay.
And we figure it out before, but not always.
What do you mean by text?
When you say
You mentioned text, music.
It's
Oh, I
actually
mean, really text and really using words.
dancers speaking.
Dancers speaking.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. for
Not
example.
tonight, but
Not,
in
not
past.
tonight, but in other pieces. Like last piece, it was on a text of Peter Handke. And just before, there was quite a lot of text which was written together with the dancers. Yeah.
Thank you.
How long is the average tenure currently with your team of dancers? In other words, how long has each one been with you?
This company.
Oh, well, some of the people, 3 or 4 people are quite a long time. Like Fumio, she's there already 14 years or what, or 11 or 12 years maybe. But most of the people who are dancing tonight have been like a group of people who have been together since the last 3 years. Yeah. But sometimes dancers come and then they go away for several different reasons.
Usually, because of the way they're working and it's not working out for you, is it usually that sort of thing where you have to ask them to leave? Or is
Then
it
I send them out? No.
Yeah.
Generally not. Well, sometimes people want to go to, very often people want to go to make their own work. Sometimes they want to have children. Sometimes they miss their lovers because they come from all over the world and they have to live in Belgium and they sometimes they find out they don't they want to do different work or have a different life. It's
Yeah, it's very strange, for sure.
it's that's the way things go.
Yes.
As a choreographer, what do the dancers provide you in the creation of the dance?
A lot, because it's a constant dialogue with them. You give a starting point and they give counter propositions and they go with, or sometimes they give a lot of resistance. They give a lot of of their own stories. A lot of different things. Yeah.
We have one last question. Yes.
Do you choreograph for certain dancers, or do the dancers fit the choreography, or do you have a dancer in mind when you're choreographing?
Well, I don't have him in mind. I generally have him in front of me. But well, you always. Even if you think about it very rigorously, formally, the dancers who's there and you're creating with, his body and his story will always have an influence on how you choreograph. And then that's why it's always a delicate thing when dancers leave and they have to be replaced. It's not impossible, and sometimes it even is better off when people leave and somebody else takes the role over, and you get to very beautiful surprises.
Does it often change then?
It changes, but it depends from the piece. Some pieces are structurally very tight, and then you don't want to change it. Others, they're way much more written in an individually related. Yeah. Some pieces are even written so individually related that you find that they can't be replaced, or you have to really rewrite them. So it really depends from the pieces.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and in particular, I'd really like to thank Anne Teresa De Keersmaeker for taking this time to be with us tonight and to bring the work drumming to you tonight. Thank you.